Hello, welcome back to the channel. My name is Andre and I'm your bookworm. And today we have not a book review. We've had a few and there are still many to come. But today we're going to go a bit back in time and we're going to do the December wrap up and predictive reading of January, even though we're already like halfway through January. But we'll get there. For the ones that don't know, these videos are basically me telling you what I was able to read in the previous month, which in this case was December, and what I predict I'll read in the next month, which in this case should be January. But because I've been away, I only return now, and so this video only comes up now, and so there will be some mixing of the months, but I'll let you know when that happens. As I was predicting, this month was chaotic. I invested a lot of time on reading at the start of the month because I knew towards the end it was going to be chaos. I was going to be away. It's going to be a lot of things going around, festivities. So I wouldn't be able to read as much. And thankfully, I was able to read quite a lot in the first 2-3 weeks of December. And I was able to finish 4 books and 4 manga volumes. That gives me a total of around 3,500 pages, which again is a tiny bit better than the month before. So yay for me. And it means that we're still on an upward trajectory in terms of number of pages read. And the good part of it is that the scores kept being high. There wasn't any disappointment in books. The scores vary from 4.2 to 5, and there were a few 5s, which is really good because it just means we ended the year in a great stand and with a lot of great reads, I guess. But so let's start with the current reads, which won't be really current, but when the month of January started, they were current. So first one, yes, I'm still reading Game of Thrones, the first book of A Song of Ice and Fire by George R.R. Martin. I'm around halfway through, and yes, it's taken me quite a while to reach this stage. My body read has slowed down, also because of Christmas and New Year's, so everyone is reading a bit less, but hopefully I'll be able to speed up. I don't think I'll be able to finish it this month, but for sure in the month of February, I want to finish this and move on to the next book of A Song of Ice and Fire. My other read is in my Kindle, which is The Exile by Ryan Cahill. This is a short story in the world of the bound and the broken, and technically you should read this between the second and the third books, if I'm not mistaken. I would say 3/4 of the way through. It's very small, it reads quite fast. I have been taking a stupid amount of time to read it, but that's just me. But the thing is, I'm enjoying it. I like seeing how certain characters came to be, how like the events that led it to them become the character that they are, and this definitely fulfills that. I am still not sure if this short story is as good as the first one, and because of that, I'm unsure again if I will be reading the third book in the Bound and the Broken series, the main series, right after, or if I'll jump into something else. And my third ongoing read at the time that December ended and January started, I was reading Artemis by Andy Weir. Meanwhile, I have finished it. I won't score it in this video because this book belongs in the January wrap-up, but just know this is a science fiction book. It's from the same author as The Martian and Project Hail Mary. This one is famous for being the worst of the 3 books, and I think my opinion will also lean in that direction, but yeah, you'll have to wait for the actual review of this book to figure out what I mean by that. Okay, so those were the ongoing reads that I had. What about the books that I actually finished in December? Starting with my Kindle, I finished The Lord of the Mysteries, the first volume by the author Cuttlefish That Loves Diving. I think I got it right. And this was quite a big volume. I mean, it has 1,100 something pages on the Kindle version that I got. So it did take a while, but I'm glad that I finished. This is a web novel, and this was my first web novel venture. So I was excited to figure out how different it is from a normal novel. And it was clunky at the start, but the more I read it, the more enthusiastic I got and the more adventurous it got. So by the end, I was really having a lot of fun reading this volume and this web novel. On Goodreads, this volume has a score of 4.51 out of 5, and my score was a 4.4 out of 5, so they're kind of similar-ish. And in fact, I was quite surprised that this volume of this web novel has such a high score. Okay, that it doesn't have that many ratings. You'll see that in the book review that I do for this novel, but still, I thought it was surprising that it had such a big rating, and I'm very curious to read the next ones and see how they compare, if it gets even better or worse as the story goes on. The next book I finished was Aurora by Kim Stanley Robinson. This is a science fiction book, an isolated book. There's no sequels, there's no prequels, there's nothing of that. This is a solitary one, and this is hard science fiction to be exact. I had read stuff from this author before, like the Red Mars, Blue Mars, Green Mars trilogy, these books over here, and they're good, but they're also quite dense in terms of information and all the science behind what's happening. So it took me a bit to get used to his writing style, but I think it had amazing concepts, as Kim Stanley Robinson usually does. Although for me the ending was a bit mixed, and again I don't want to provide too many details because this is not a review for this book, but I will have a review for this book. But just know that for me the ending was a bit mixed. There were things that I enjoyed and I was glad that I saw the end of, and then there were others that I thought were a bit more prolonged than they should be. But for now, just know that on Goodreads, this book has a score of 3.78 out of 5, and my score was a 4.2 out of 5. So I guess I thought that this book was a lot better than the average person does, but at the same time, I think it's quite a harsh score, 3.78. I think it deserves at least a 4 for the amount of information and science that it exists there, the amount of effort that was put in there, and it was written quite well. But I mean, there's nothing I can do really. After that, I finished Ruin by John Gwynne. This is the third book of The Faithful and the Fallen, an epic fantasy series, Nordic inspired. And this means that I'm getting very close to the end of this series because there's only 4 books. This is the third one, so just one more to go. But what did I think of this one in very general terms? I think it was better than the previous one, which was called Vala, but there were still moments that did not vibe well with me. I think they were well done. It's just that the direction the story went wasn't the one I thought was most appropriate or the one I enjoyed the most, let's say. But that just means that if you don't really agree with me, it's fine because it's just a matter of preferences. It might be more up your alley than mine, and that's totally fine. On Goodreads, this book has a score of 4.49 out of 5, and my score was a 4.4. So as you can see, it's not a bad score. It's quite elevated. It's similar-ish again to the one on Goodreads. It's just slightly lower, and I think for me it would have been, could have been a 4.6, but nothing beyond that. But I'm really hoping that the ending is amazing and super epic and it reaches a 5. So let's hope for it. And the last book I finished in December was Weird Sisters by Terry Pratchett, which this is the cover actually. We've done a few Discworld books in the past months, so I think I'm gonna take a small break of Discworld and read something else, because I feel that if I read too many Discworlds in a row, they start losing their momentum and their funniness, and I don't want to lose that. I don't want to get, I don't want to get burnt out with Discworld because I really enjoy when I read it. This book in specific belongs to the Witches series, and I thought it was very endearing. There were so many references to fairy tales and tropes, and those were always funny. Together with the characters, they are so charismatic and so lovable. I think it's a book that you enjoy from the first page to the last. Not that everyone thinks that, because on Goodreads, this book has a score of 4.16 out of 5, and my score was a 4.4 out of 5. So this one has a bit more of a difference, and I do think it deserves the highest score. But I can also understand why certain people wouldn't vibe well with it. At the start, it was a bit clunky for me, but it got better, and the more references I was able to capture, the more fun it was, and I was enjoying a lot more. As for mangas, I read 4 volumes of One Piece, volumes 52 to 55, and this pretty much finishes the Sabaody arc and starts the Impel Down arc. And I mean, it's almost finishing it too, because so much has happened. I never realized how quick these arcs were supposed to be because I've only seen the anime, and in the anime they prolong it for quite a while. Not as much as some other arcs in the future, but still, I thought it was gonna last a bit longer, and I feel like maybe I have 3 more volumes, maybe 4 more volumes of Impel Down, and then we'll go into Marineford, which is one of the biggest and most epic arcs in One Piece. But I also think that the quickness of these arcs, everything is just happening so fast, it really delivers a big punch to the reader, especially in those moments that I don't want to spoil, but there are moments where you get jaw dropped so much and you feel like, oh my god, this is going to be the end. And because everything is just boom, 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 then you don't really have time to breathe and think, oh, maybe this will solve some other issues. But no, I think it it works really in their favor. On Goodreads, these scores have respectively, no, these manga volumes have respectively the scores of 4.62, 4.55, 4.58, and 4.6. My scores were 5, 5, 5, and 4.8. So as you can see, all the volumes were above the Goodreads average score. I really enjoy these moments. They were so epic. Everything that really captures up the characters and the connection they have as the crew and everything in between. I think the author does a really good job. Both the author and illustrators, they are amazing. And those were the books / mangas that I finished in December. Now, what are we gonna read in January, or what have we started already? Well, one of the obvious answers is A Game of Thrones, because I'm still reading this. I don't think I'll be able to finish it this month. Who knows, maybe I'll have a sprint and I'll finish it, but don't really count on that. Count more for this to be a February finish read. Another not surprise will be Artemis. I mean, even though I've started, I was reading it in January, I've already finished, and so this will show up in the January wrap-up. But a surprise that I wasn't expecting to read, but then suddenly just appeared and I was really keen because it was just in my hands, was Dragonsteel Prime by Brandon Sanderson. This is the hardcover edition that I got from the backer kit for the Words of Radiance leather bound edition. There's just too many words for these editions. But yeah, so I started this book. I'm around 20% in. I'm very keen to read it. It's been fun. It's been a great read. Even though it's a book that technically wasn't published, it was one of the first ideas that Brandon Sanderson had. It eventually didn't really work, so he adopted some of those ideas and characters into his other series. But now he has this as a kind of published work that doesn't really belong to Cosmere, but kind of does in some way, not officially. And I'm expecting to finish this week, actually, so because it's Brandon Sanderson, it always reads fast and it reads fun, so it's always a pleasure. And once I finish that, I'm gonna go back to the promise that I did in November to read in December, and that was Legends and Lattes by Travis Baldree. This is a cozy fantasy book, very famous. I bet almost everyone knows about this book. I haven't read it. I'm very keen, especially because I read House in the Cerulean Sea, and I enjoy that book, even though like they have nothing to do with this one, except that both are cozy fantasies. So I hope that I enjoy this one as much as everyone does, because there isn't anything worse than everyone loving the book and you read it and then you're like, actually, not really that keen on that book. So I hope I enjoy it. In terms of Kindle, once I finish The Exile, which I'm sure I will, I'm still undecided if I should read the third book of The Bound and the Broken by Rand Cahill, which is Of Darkness and Light, if I'm not mistaken, or if I should read Lord of the Mysteries Volume 2, because that was such an easy, fun read, and maybe I need that to kickstart my year. So I'm still deciding. It'll depend a lot on how The Exile ends. And my last attempt to read in January will be a new series, a new fantasy series, also Nordic inspired, and it starts with A Northern Wrath by, and this is a hard name, I keep forgetting, Tilde Cold Holt, which is a new author. I haven't read anything by them, so let's hope it's good. This is the Broken Binding special edition from their subscriptions. I have the short showing the art in this book, which is really lovely, and it really makes me think that it will be a good read based on the illustrations, so let's hope that expectation is met, and especially because there are 3 big books in this series, so if they are not good, they're going to be very long reads, but let's hope not. And of course, amongst all of these, I'm going to keep reading mangas, so One Piece, hopefully I'll be able to read another 3 or 4 volumes. I don't know if that finishes Impel Down. I hope it does, because the next arc will just be amazing, and I cannot wait how that is put down into manga form. But now I want to hear from you. How was the last month of your year, and what are you expecting to read at the start of this year, and what was your reading challenge? I'm going to have a few videos of other content aside from book reviews. I'm trying to put those out slowly, but keep waiting, and meanwhile, don't forget, subscribe, like the content, and let me know what you think. So I'll see you on Thursdays and Sundays, now back to regular schedule, okay? See you soon.